Mic check, mic check.
Order. This is Zebulon Board of Commissioners special special call meeting for June 23rd, 2025. Before we do the approval, I need to add amendment which would include discussion of closed session with the town attorney regarding litigation matter with Deacon Development LLC versus the town of Zebulon as permitted under NC General Statutes 143-318.11A3. This item came to our attention earlier today and requires a timely consideration. Now, is there a motion for approval of the agenda?
As approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion. All in favor? Motion passes. Thank you. New business. Board vacancy. Sam?
Podium. So I wanted to speak to you all about the law behind this board vacancy and what you all must do, and then kind of what you all can choose to do. Okay. So there's two kind of schemes behind what you need to do in terms of appointing somebody to fill the vacancy of Commissioner Clark. 168-63 is the statutory scheme for that, and it notes that a successor shall be elected following a vacancy. So the shall is important, and it's consistent with the charter that I'll talk about next, but it's not discretionary about whether this board fills the vacancy or waits or doesn't fill the vacancy or something else. The law is clear that you need to fill the vacancy. And then the charter speaks to how you do that. It says, in the event a vacancy occurs in the office of a commissioner, the board shall, by plurality vote, and I'll tell you what that means in a minute, appoint some qualified person to fill the vacancy until the next general election, and the person appointed to fill the vacancy shall serve only until an elected successor takes office. There are additional criteria around if the vacancy occurred and the next election was not already in place to fill that vacancy, but because this seat was already up in November, those don't apply. So the appointment will be through the process that we talk about in a minute for a person to fill that seat through the election, and then the election will be for that seat, and then when the election's over and the results are in and that commissioner selected, then that person will take over from the seat. So it is kind of short term, just because of the calendar here, but there's no, you can't not do it. We need to appoint it. So that's the requirements, is that it be done, and it be done by a plurality vote. And so there are a couple ways, and there's some good school of government guidance on this. As you all know, the school of government provides great background and interpretation of state statutes to aid lawyers and counsel in situations like this. And there are two primary methods to do that. So one way to do it, this is where kind of the discretion parts come in. So what I've said so far is it's not really up to you. You got to appoint someone. But how you do it is up to you, okay? Kind of the part of what I'm talking about now. And so you could do it by like a motion and a second. One, you could say, I move for, Sam Slater to fill the vacancy. Second, if you get, yeah, I don't live here, so you can't do that. They got to be a resident. But that would be fun, yeah. You could do that. A majority vote is a plurality vote, so you could do it that way. But the way we've done it in the past, and the way School of Government recommends, is through, it's called a nomination and a ballot process. So through some process of either you're sourcing the applicants, of applicants submitting applications to the town expressing interest, some process of identifying a roster of candidates. That's the sort of nomination process. Then there's ballot voting, and the ballot voting is you just write your name down in a ballot process. you don't have to say out loud at the moment, but the ballots themselves become a part of the minute, so it's not secret voting in the sense that no one will know who you voted for. They'll know who you voted for because it'll be on the ballot. But then a plurality vote control. So if there were 3 candidates and it went 2-1-1, that 2 gets it. You don't need a majority vote. The plurality vote means the most votes of the people that are in the nomination process. And so that's the way most places do it. That's the way that the School of Government sort of recommends, because it allows, it allows consideration of a broader range of candidates, and it's consistent with the charter in that the charter notes that the appointment will happen by a plurality vote. So I'll stop on that, answer any questions. And actually, Lisa can speak to this better than me, but I know in the past that's a similar process that we've done. One thing I'll note that's interesting in these 2 different ways. So 160A-69 talks about the role of the mayor, and the role the mayor has in breaking ties where an equal number of affirmative votes and negative votes exist. So in that motion scenario, if you said Sam Slater and it was 2 ayes and 2 nays, then the mayor would be able to break the tie in that scenario. In the plurality vote system, because you're not making an affirmative vote or a negative vote, you're just voting a name. There's nothing affirmative or negative about that. The mayor doesn't break the tie. So if it were 2-2 in a plurality vote, then there's no plurality, and the process would continue again until the board reaches a plurality. I think I see everybody looking and nodding. That's encouraging. Any questions?
Any questions, comments from the board?
Lisa, anything else? Yeah.
No, Sam's explained it. I mean, you guys know what we've done in the past with the application, and they speak before the board and that kind of thing, but you're not bound to do it the same way, just like Sam said. So it's totally up to you.
Action discussion for you all now is to just sort of choose what you want to do, choose the process. So if you say, look, you talk amongst yourselves, I think we do it this way or that way, I like this or I like that, or ask me questions, but the idea would be that you to fill the vacancy consistent with that process.
And if I may add to it, Mayor and Commissioners, is that you also can discuss what criteria you want to set if you choose to go that route. Whether you want them to present, right? Or, yeah.
I think in the past, maybe people have come and sort of made their case. You can do that. It can be on the papers only. You know, it can be the names that you come up with. There's not a statutory scheme for how you source the candidates, but that's a point of discussion and a procedure for the board to consider and adopt.
Any further questions or comments?
Is there a time hack that we have to follow, guideline that we have to follow?
Yeah, so there's not. The statutes say shall, and but you have your regular meeting schedule. You've got to do these things. If you're going on ballot and nomination, there's got to be time to consider candidates that want to come in. So, I would not say to delay, but also there's not a within 30 days, within 60 days. It's, when your meetings are. We know there's fewer in July. So I know in brainstorming, as I've thought about it and speaking with Anna, the thought being that if you selected a process through discussion tonight, then that process could be implemented and you could be in position, say like at the August regular meeting to implement it, select a candidate. Mm-hmm.
Any other further discussion?
I don't know if it's relevant to just say that because it's an election year, it definitely has a totally different tone to it versus if it was last year, right? And so maybe that's the timeline question is part of that. And that could be part of the process that you wanted, or that could be part of the process discussions or criteria discussion. It's November. If you complete the process in your August or September, are you looking for someone who will just sit on the commission for 2 months, or who will sit on the commission and just be there for the next couple of years or 4 years. I don't know. I'm just saying that because it's an election year, in my experience with other elected bodies, it's always been a little different in terms of how they handle that. Sometimes they will say, we want people to pledge that they will not run in a general election in order for them to be a candidate. Some people don't worry about that. They just leave it open. So again, I'm just kind of sharing those because it's 2025. You have an election coming up in a few months, and that could be a factor in your conversations.
Any other discussion, comments from the board? Thank you, Sam.
Go into conversation on the process, or is that what we need to do now?
Could, or you could have it on the agenda for another meeting for discussion. Unless you want to discuss it now. I mean, we don't have any candidates. Well, can't say we don't have any candidates, but the criteria we haven't decided on how what criteria we're gonna use.
So,
And I don't know if everybody's ready to discuss that at this point without maybe thinking about it a little bit.
I guess for just the option of like discussion, the process tonight, would it be, so talking to fellow board members, will we look at the application process to be similar? I think I was the last person that was appointed to the board. And so would we look at it and just saying that we want to do the same application process where people can fill out the application, where we post it online and they fill out the application and then give them a certain amount of time to complete it? Or Commissioner Miles, you're shaking your head. What you thinking?
I'm listening.
Oh, I was going to say, what you thinking?
No,
I feel
I'm
like
listening.
your
I'm
brain
just
turning.
totally listening. No, totally.
Okay. I was like, what you got?
No, totally listening.
So that's what I was just thinking of the same thing, and that's only because I'm familiar with that process because I went through that process. And at that time, it was an application process. We submitted the application. It was 6 people that came before the board to speak, to say why we wanted to serve Zebulon. And then the board came back, made nominations, and voted that way. It seems like a seamless process, and we've done it.
Yeah, that's fine by me. I think
Yeah.
that we just want to make sure that we've got a pretty swift turnaround on those applications so that we have time to review them.
For this short time, for me, I'm gonna speak transparent. I like the plurality. We get some nominations, get some names, and we go from there. Because even when you did it, I was part of that process. That was a time. It took us like 5 or 6 months before we filled that spot.
I did, yeah.
It took us a while time frame. You didn't sit in this.
No, I don't think
You
it
said
was-
to sit in December, January, February.
February 28th.
February 28th. So that was
2
we got
months.
November, December.
You applied when you started the application process?
And
That was it.
January, so really it was 2
January.
months.
yeah, so it was, I think it was December.
That was it. She started talks. We started talks before that.
Well, we can make it however long we want it.
Right.
I like the plurality.
Long process.
Yeah.
Applications went
long.
up, they had a month to submit, and then you got them as part of your packets when it came out for that meeting.
Because there were several, special meetings. We had to come in, maybe there was a special call meeting for us to present to the board, and then after that,
Correct.
we presented that night, and then you all voted. I was sworn in March 4th. I remember
Yeah.
that much.
We go through the application process, then we do have to weed out. So we're going through, putting that out, having enough time frame for people to apply. Then we have to go through, it sounds like what you guys did, was go through the applications and then submit names from the application process.
You
I'm
looking,
questioning because I wasn't a part of it.
so you're looking at now, if you did it in August, September timeframe, another month, by the time October, that person would serve probably possibly 1 month, maybe?
But we're in July,
No.
we're in June.
We're in
Why we
June.
can't start
July.
now?
Because we won't have another meeting in July. We won't meet again until August. Then you have your name submission.
We have a
Possibly
July
at the
7th
August-
meeting, right?
Oh, one at a time.
Regular board
Commissioner Miles?
Know what it is, like I said, so I'm looking at July timeframe. We have a July 7th, but then we won't meet again until August, I think, August 4th or something like that. Then if you would have all your names potentially at that time frame, you could assess then. Then you look at another month, we take the names, we assess. Then you come back September timeframe, you will vote on it September potentially. September, then we'll swear them in, possibly that night in September, if we select it. Then you look at October, November, that's what I'm saying, 1 month.
So could we not decide, do the applications, and could we not decide like for the August work session? So that way we're not going out of another month? I mean, can we?
I've thought about a timeline like that, right? Like if you were to do this, Lisa mentioned it was about a month, application window or so. So that gets you to the middle of next month. You can kind of take the next step at your August regular meeting. And if you could do it then, and if you don't do it then, you could do it at the work session.
So with the plurality, what we do, we would come back in September, in August, and name a name.
Based
and go
on the
from there.
applications, maybe?
Yeah, so hypothetically, say those applications come in, you could do plurality vote for all of them. You could do plurality vote for some of them. You could discuss that as a group at that meeting. And then if you wanted to do it at the August regular meeting, you could. If you wanted to wait and do it at the work session, you could. But the ballot and nomination process, say there's 3 names, right? So you just, the 3 names, and those people have presented, if you want to do the presentations like we've done before, which makes sense, then say they come and speak at the regular meeting, right? Like they get their application materials in a month. They have an opportunity to address you at the August regular meeting. Maybe, I think it would make sense to consider that, right? And then say at your work session, you have those 3 names, first ballot, maybe you get plurality, maybe you don't, right? And you just vote it out until the seat's filled.
Like we
And
kind
then,
of like
and then
what
the
we do-
appointment could happen right. The appointment could happen right then.
very similar to board appointment, like kind of what we do with board appointments, pretty much. It's this, sounds like the very similar process. Yeah?
I think so.
Yeah.
Okay.
What's the process if we don't get, if we don't get a majority amount, how do I say this?
Plurality, right?
Plurality.
Yeah, no, it's not, well, yes, plurality, but I'm waiting, right now, we don't have any applicants that are coming before us. So who's to say that we're going to in the next week or 2 or the next month or so? So what does that look like if we don't have a list of candidates that we're able to choose from? Then what's the next step?
I'm sure we'll have some candidates.
I think you will.
That's what's in the plurality.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Sam, sorry.
Yes, no, sorry, guys. I think you will, and if you don't, then there's always backups, right? I mean, you can nominate. If you open it to applications and no one's interested, then you can pursue a different process. But you've always done it that way. I think it's always worked that way. And then that plurality vote will result in somebody. I mean, there might be some ties along the way, but there'll be some ballot where somebody gets a plurality.
So with the plurality, just make sure I understand, the mayor doesn't have to break that tie. It's going to be up to the board kind of where we go with that. That's even if we didn't do the process of people coming before us. Am I correct? Well, we had a name, Jane Smith. She came before us. Plurality said 3, said, okay, we're good to go, or 2, whatever. You're going to go from there, correct?
Right. If you have multiple candidates,
Right.
then each of you selects the candidate you'd like to see fill the seat. And if it's 4-0, 3-1, 2-1-1, any of those where one candidate has more than the others, that is the seat.
Yeah.
That person fills the seat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you have something?
No,
You good?
I'm good.
Any further discussion, comment?
So is that the process that we're going to go by? Because if so, we need to think about a timeline so that we can give staff direction.
I think that that's the process that we should go through, and I think that it would be easy-ish, perhaps, for us to dig out the application that we've used in the past, and if we can ask that the application go live, what's a reasonable timeline, do you think?
Tomorrow.
It's easy enough to do, just have to go in so that it's fillable, like our board appointment application.
Right.
So within 2 days, it could be up and running by Wednesday.
So reality, with that 2 days, you come in, we would have applications sitting in our possession by when? And if you're saying that 2 days?
You would have them available in the packet for your August meeting.
August meeting.
And that's when they would come and speak, and then you could decide to vote on it at your work session, like,
Or
Well,
we
you
could
could vote
do
that
it in
night.
the August meeting, too.
you could vote
That
that,
night.
you absolutely could vote that night.
Yeah.
I would like to do, if we can knock
You
it
good with
out.
it?
Yeah, I think, so are we gonna give, so if we're saying 2 days, today's Monday, so we'll give a deadline, we need to set a application open window and a closed window.
Yeah. So,
Can we do July 16th?
you could cut it off like July 20th at midnight, you know? And so when we come in the week of the 21st, which is the week we start working on the agenda, so that would give you basically 4 weeks, almost 4 weeks.
That'd be good.
Okay, that's fine by me.
One in agreement?
You good with that? You good with that? 20?
Yes? Okay. Yes.
We would have them in, you close out on the 20th, we would have them in our hand again, by when then, to assess those.
The 30th?
Okay.
And then that gives you 4 days, that's a little time for we want to speak to a candidate
And
prior
our
to.
meeting is the 4th, that following Monday.
Gives you 1, 2, 3, that gives you 4 days. Say you have 10 candidates you want to speak to them prior to. That doesn't give enough time for me, the way I operate, if I wanted to meet with someone to actually talk to them, so I can do a true assessment. I would love to close out on the 16th. That gives us a little bit more time frame. Then we could have them in our hand potentially by the 20th or 21st when you guys come back in. And then that gives me a tough time if I want to reach out to a candidate, potential candidate, see what they're about and how they operate, and then go from there.
Or we could just do it at the work
You would have
session and get
3
it
weeks
done.
after the August 4th meeting. If you're not going to talk about this until the 21st, you would have 3 more weeks to talk to the candidates as often as you would like.
You're talking about
Unless we decide to vote right then
One
and
at a
there on the
time,
4th.
please.
Right.
I think just one point of clarification is that, Lisa, I think there was some discussion up here about doing the vote on the 4th versus at the work session.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
I think there was discussion up here about the timeline difference is whether you vote on the 4th or at the work session. If you vote at the work session, then you got the time that you're talking about. If you vote on the 4th, you
That's
don't.
what I said. I thought we was at the 4th.
First, is that what you're asking?
I was saying push it back to the 16th in case we want to vote on the 4th. That's what I was under the assumption that we were going to vote on the 4th. We'll be able to assess. That's what we had just said earlier, so.
If you feel comfortable over the 4th to vote, if not, then we'll vote at the work session.
Correct.
That's just the options. You may
Are
not,
you referring to the work session in August?
yes.
Okay, thank you.
So are we going to ask for the application period to close on the 16th and hopefully for us to have the candidates sent to us by July 23rd?
I'm good with that.
Them sent outside of the packet.
Outside the packet.
That's, even if you ended on the 20th, they could be emailed to all of you on the 21st, giving you 2 weeks.
Oh, okay, all right.
That would give you 2 full weeks to talk to people.
Any other comments, questions?
No, just as long as we are getting the applications with a quick turnaround after the closing, I think that's fine.
So just to verify, what date will we have them in our hand, ma'am?
If it closes on the 20th,
Okay.
then on the 21st, they can all be printed out and they can be sent to you on the 21st.
Perfect.
Any other comments?
Yes, and so as far as the criteria, will we, I feel like we should just, the criteria that should be on the board.
Just like when we
Yeah,
did with
that-
the
that's fine by
I don't
me.
really think that we need to put any
Something that
extra
doesn't apply to-
criteria on it.
No, nothing
Okay.
different.
Just if you're, I agree. I think that's good.
Any other questions, comments? Thank you.
Does staff have what they need? You guys have what you need?
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
Do we need to say the criteria just for public? Sam, could you speak to the criteria to
Just
serve?
a resident of the town, and I think, is it no felonies? And I think it's no felonies. I think it's a resident of the town and no felonies. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is special events, but before we go into presentation, we want to get a update from Interim Chief Grossman.
Mayor and Commissioners. The manager asked me just to kind of come in and give you guys a recap of what happened Thursday night at the community park on the private event. Just a short recap, and then kind of our steps, what we're doing now to try to see how we can work forward past something like this happen again. Sometimes it's unpredictable, but so our staff was aware that there was a private event at the community park. Probably a week prior or so, we were contacted by staff just to say, hey, there's going to be a separate event going on at the community park starting at 7 o'clock. It's a private event. They rented the basketball courts and I think the ball field, approximately maybe 500 people. So we were like, okay, so we put out to our folks that Thursday night, we wanted our folks to stop into the town event at the community center to say hi and see how that was going. And then also to just keep an eye and see what was happening down at the park in the private event. So shortly after 7 o'clock, our officers got a phone call from one of the park staff that was at the community center event and said, hey, can y'all come down here and maybe help us with some parking issues? We got cars, we can't get in the community center parking for the event that's happening down at the park. So as they're on their way down there, Lieutenant Perry and Sergeant Oliver went down. Of course, as soon as they get down there, immediate congestion on Arundel Ave at the park. So Oliver goes around, he goes in the park, he's calling back to Lieutenant Perry and advising him that there is a huge crowd down here and it's spread through the whole park, and there's no more parking down here. So, he was like, I don't know what to tell you about parking. Lieutenant Perry stops, tries to manage with people in the roadway. They were stopping cars, letting people out to go in, walk into the park, and he's trying to get traffic, say, people, folks, please either pull into the park or, continue on. At that time, Sergeant Oliver went through the park, made his way to the back. There was a large tent towards the concession stands there at the park between the ball field to the side to observe what was going on and everything. This time he's talking to Lieutenant Perry on the phone saying, hey, we're way understaffed, something's gonna happen here. We need to find out what's going on. Immediately, Sergeant Oliver's observing alcohol being drank out of fifth of liquor, open bottles, everything. He relays that to Lieutenant Perry. Lieutenant Perry calls the park staff to say, hey, is there an alcohol permit for this event out here? It was relayed back to them. No, it's not. There's no alcohol to be out there. And then the amount of people came into question that they felt it was way over 500 people. So at that time, they started getting a game plan together. Lieutenant Perry was in contact with staff because they wanted to see definitely about the regulations of staff on shutting the party down because they were in clear violation of what was in their application. So as they're doing this, Sergeant Oliver sitting at the back of the park, just observing, taking some pictures of folks with the alcohol, and he started growing more concerned about how many people there was and enough help. So he advises Lieutenant Perry again. Lieutenant Perry called Wendell PD on the phone and said, hey, we need y'all maybe to start this way. We're going to have to shut a party down with probably over 500 people. So Wendell supervisor's like, no problem, we'll be on the way. So they started coming. Other 2 officers that were on duty made their way down there. They're stuck in the traffic. At this time, Sergeant Oliver sitting back there has got his window down and gunfire erupts. And for being an officer, the only one there in the back of that park at that time, he did an excellent job. Didn't go into a panic or anything. Immediately got on the radio to other officers calling for help that, hey, we have an active shooter, something going on here at the park. At the same time, one of the officers that was coming into the park is asking, where's it happening? Where's it happening? Because he's hearing it at the front of the park. So they think they had 2 different locations. Sergeant Oliver gets out of his car, tremendous job, grabs his rifle, starts going towards the food trucks they had at the back by the concession stands and this huge tent. It's complete chaos, people running everywhere, into the woods, cars trying to get out of there. He's immediately, you can hear him on his camera, asking if anybody's been hurt, has anybody been shot, anybody, repeatedly, and telling people to get down, to get out of the area. And then units started arriving. The rest of our guys got into the park after the traffic jam. Wake County Sheriff's Department and Wendell PD got there. All the officers got on foot, started searching everywhere. Complete chaos. Wake County sat out the area down, continued their secondary search for any victims. They searched the woods for a good hour or more. At that time, they, knew the park was secure. We didn't have any victims. So they all met and just, decided our investigations would take over in the morning, because at that time, of course, it fell a flood, quite a storm came through. So our investigations unit with a couple of officers also, they went back to the park Friday morning and did several grid searches, we call them, where the officers are walking. They had 3 different canines here. We had help from Raleigh PD and started looking for shell casings. They took a break around lunchtime and then had lunch, regrouped. Another dog came from Raleigh PD and came in to help with the search. And sometime in the afternoon there, they did start locating shell casings. So they do have shell casings in hand for those, which will be submitted into evidence, and we have some ways they'll be run to see if, their relation to any other crimes. So along with that, the investigation's also looking at videos off cameras, off cell phones, our videos off our cameras in our cars, trying to ID people. There's a lot of videos that have been posted on social media. It's kind of crazy to think people are just going to stop the video stuff with something going on like that, but they surely did. So they were posting them on there. And they go back and the process afterwards, start looking at it. They're looking at social media and everything and advertisements for this event. And right to start off, the stuff we're gathering is the event was not intended for a Juneteenth celebration. It didn't look anything clear to be an event like that. So they're just looking at that, following up. They do have some witnesses from the park that had a couple vehicles that they gave us that night. They're trying to track down those vehicles and trying to ID some license plates off those vehicles. So they're just continuing to work on it. Right now, that's where we're at. So hopefully we'll be able to put something together to, be able to put a case together for 1, 2, 3 individuals to hold justice to them for this terrifying event for the citizens that were there to have a good time, and then the officers also. But like I said, I do commend my officers that were on scene, that acted immediately, as you always say, that we're the ones running into the fire, and they did. So just want to commend them for that evening. So, but for us, that's it right now. We're just going to continue our work and see where it takes us.
We definitely want to commend our staff, our police staff for taking action to prevent any further violations in the park. Thank you for that. Any questions or comments from the board?
Just very grateful that we have such a well-trained staff. So well done to you for keeping your team so well prepared.
Yep, we're well prepared. And also, after things happen like this too, I've been in conversation with Sheila, there's always room for improvement on applications and different things like that. So, maybe, their process is going to change. We don't want it where officers have to be at a private birthday party at the park. It's just things like that. So we've discussed some different things that maybe they'll be changing a little bit of the application process. So, all right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chief, and thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. One thing I want to note is we do not want to discourage people from having events in our town. I think it's a good thing. We just want to make sure that when these things happen, people also have to be confident in the law enforcement officers that we have, that we do a darn good job of protecting our residents and our businesses. And we'll continue to make sure we monitor these types of things so they do not repeat themselves. It's a great place to live, great place to do business. We'll continue to push that message. So that's why I wanted Chief to brief us tonight. So, thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Next, special events update.
Director Long comes to the podium again. When I presented the budget to you last Monday, one of the things that you mentioned was Commissioner Davis wanted us to come and discuss events and make recommendation to you. We felt that we should do that today because time is of essence. We really have about 3 months, really, or maybe even less, to start talking about what happens at the end of the year. And so what she's going to lay out to you will look at those two signature events that we've done traditionally in December, and then talk about the fact that they are very important to our town, but we also have challenges with these events, as we have mentioned to you before. And the goal is, how do we continue to have an event that attracts and encourages our residents and really draw people to our town, while at the same time we minimize disruption to residents, so to speak, and also leverage the limited resources that we have as your staff. So she's going to lay this out, and then we have a recommendation at the end of our presentation, and we'll take our direction from you when she's done with her presentation. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the board. Thank you for giving me some time to talk with you about events. And just as a recap, 6 operating budget and our capital budget was just adopted, but just as a recap, the staff recommendation was to focus on 2 flagship events, one in the spring, one at the end of the year that would serve as your holiday event. Recognizing that it is challenging for the town at large, not just staff, but the town, to support both Candy Cane Lane and the Christmas Parade. The board adopted a budget that added funding for a 3rd event that is to be determined, and requested further discussion regarding the Christmas Parade. In addition to funding specific to events, you've also funded updates to the town's strategic plan. And I'll talk about that a little bit more as we go through the presentation. And just as a quick recap, the elements of the Christmas Parade and the Candy Cane Lane, I wish I had an opportunity to highlight what the similarities were, because there are quite a few similarities, but the day just did not shape up that way. So I'm going to go over both and try to highlight what's similar. So Candy Cane Lane and Christmas Parade, they both have opportunities for youth performers. They both have opportunities for civic groups to get engaged. They both have opportunities for bands to be engaged and for us to include music. They both include Santa. They both include opportunity for business exposure. And depending on how the different businesses or civic groups engage, there could also be opportunity in both events for candy distribution or swag distribution, just information sharing about the different groups. The Christmas parade has decorated floats, car clubs, and tractors, whereas Candy Cane Lane has more activities going on with bounce houses, kids, crafts, and activities that are typically led by our civic groups and our downtown businesses. We have vendors, craft vendors, food trucks, downtown business booths. We do the tree lighting, we have caroling, we have princess sing-alongs, photo opportunities. Both events are well received in the community. There is great pride for a long-standing history, and there's the nostalgia with that. Candy Cane Lane has really grown and developed in the recent years, spurring where it just started originally as the tree lighting years ago, and it's got quite the regional draw and is unique in this area for what it offers. As recap to the two different layouts for these events and the detour, on your left is Candy Cane Lane from 2024. The light blue is showing where the event was taking place. The green and red arrows on that map demonstrate where the detours are. What's really important is that we make sure that we keep the intersection of Vance and Arundel open. The reason for that is so that we can keep the detour closer into town and we don't have to send it out of town. And that's critically important because detours impact your commerce, detours impact your citizens and your local residents, but it also impacts your emergency services. So just when you put in that detour for this traffic, it also will detour your emergency services. So they will follow the same detour that you and I would follow if we're driving here. With the Christmas parade, last year we had that altered route that kept it downtown and made it so that we did not have to also close Gannon Avenue, which would have had a tremendous impact on traffic. But even with this altered detour, we had to send traffic out of town, like around Temple Johnson, in order to get back into town. And that is the same route your emergency services would also have to follow. I'm going to share the impacts of hosting both events. So you have internal capacity from the police, fire, public works, and Parks and Rec. When you offer both events, there are tremendous logistical animals that we have to stand up. A lot of hours go into the development of our event action plans. They go into our street closures, the coordination of the event itself, making sure that we can keep our community safe and that they have a great time as well. And so being able to do that for two such large events within 2 weeks is just beyond our current capacity. But something to also take note is all of those hours that are being put into offering both of those events going on at the same time does take away from routine service levels that are offered by the different departments. So it will impact the ability to implement new projects or day-to-day activities that are typically done by these departments. We also heard that there were feedback from certain community members that it was a capacity issue for the community and they were having to choose between one versus the other. And while many years before we had Candy Cane Lane, there were civic groups that participated in the parade, but they felt like their groups, trying to think of the best way to put this. They have had the same people within their organization volunteering to do everything. And they were starting to get burnout of doing this, the same people having to do all of the different activities or events that they were signing up for. And so they had to choose between the two, and they preferred Candy Cane Lane is what we heard a lot of, but some people do prefer the parade, but they felt torn between the two and that they could not commit to both. You do have traffic impact. We do hear some feedback from our downtown businesses, not that they are against downtown events, or the closures that come with it altogether. It's just back to back. It did have an impact on them. And so, there's just a desire to have some coordination and recognition of that impact on them moving forward, and as well as just the day-to-day impact on your residents when you're pushing them toward detours. You've heard me talk about the impacts of the park for the Christmas parade in the past, and that the setup that we had, the same load in and setup for the Christmas parade just is not going to work logistically. And in addition to our own growth, we also have the growth of Johnston County. A lot of that traffic is coming right down Arundel Avenue to access 64, 264. And so it's not only our own traffic, we're also impacted by the traffic of the communities around us. And Community Park, as you know, it has one entrance in and out. And so it is very slow. If you had a lot of people coming in at one time or a lot of people coming out at one time, it will slow things down. But at the same time, we had a ton of traffic trying to come down Arundel to get out of town, heading towards Johnston County at the same exact time as we were trying to load in for the parade. And the concern of not having another access point stands out to us, as well as just the basic load-in location at Community Park with not having a really good way to move that traffic around town during that same time. It definitely has an impact. I'm going to highlight the overall costs from 2024 for Candy Cane Lane versus the Christmas parade. There are some caveats that I'm going to highlight for the Christmas parade on why it's more expensive. Just as an overview, I'm giving you the staff value that includes the hours from all departments, including the planning and logistical phase, not just the date of cost. And the miscellaneous expenses I have separated from event expenses because they are expenses that were encountered by other departments, but weren't recognized in the special event line within Parks and Recreation. And so the total cost for Candy Cane Lane is $40,885. The Christmas parade had a staff value of about the same as the staff value for Candy Cane Lane. The event expense is significantly higher, and the reason why the event expense is significantly higher is because by the time it was decided that we were going to move forward with the parade, we were also dealing with some staff changes, and we were not in a position to move forward immediately with the planning and logistics. We had to figure out how we were going to move forward, what a parade route would look like. We had to figure out who was going to help us because the town itself had never planned the Christmas parade, so we didn't have all of those pieces in place. So we had to have support to help us develop that, and so we did have a consultant that helped us with that, and that is an expense that you may or not would experience moving forward, depending on if you're trying to do one event versus two events, because we also just didn't have the capacity to do both at the same time and do it well. At the same time, we were also navigating the making sure that there are a lot of risks associated with a parade that are not risks that we encounter with the events that the town typically does and that we plan and implement. And so there were a lot of new things that we had to coordinate and make sure that those pieces were in place so that we can ensure a safe and enjoyable parade for everybody that was participating. And that's where you get a total cost of about just under $70,000 for the Christmas parade this past year. I'm gonna include the caveat that we did have a rain out for Rock the Block, and instead of the town losing money for paying for the stage and band, we were able to move that event, or not that event, but move that stage and band to like an after celebration of the parade. And that cost would have been $4,285 for the stage and band. And so I did take that out of that total because I don't think it was necessarily fair for that to immediately be assessed in it.
Sheila?
Yes.
So I just need to understand Did it go off? Yeah, it went off. I will get you another one.
on now, but this is the second time it's gone off, just so you know, maybe the battery's going. Help me understand the total cost of Candy Cane Lane, because the numbers that you have up there don't total 40,885. They total 58,570.
I might have I was making this presentation Friday in the midst of dealing with some of the and then today trying to make changes.
That's fine. I just want to understand, like.
Yeah, I know the totals are correct. The staff value, the miscellaneous expenses, and the event piece. If you give me just 1 second, let me grab a sheet of paper.
Sure.
What happened on the spreadsheet? It didn't add the 17,000. Give me just 1 second.
Thank you. You're welcome.
$58,806. I do apologize for that. Recapping, these were the elements of the events that we talked about earlier, demonstrating the different pieces and that they're both lovely events in their own, and just figuring out there is a way where potentially we could merge some of the efforts and the nostalgia behind both events and perhaps create something wonderful for us moving forward. And I'm going to pause just on those two events for a second and talk about the Zebulon strategic plan. We are, Ty has shared that he is hoping that we would be able to kick that process off in the fall of this year. And I know that's critical for a lot of different initiatives and goal setting for the town. One of the things, because we hear a lot of it's like in how we can do that successfully moving forward. So we would want to work with a consultant to do some comprehensive engagement with the community. And that may include surveys, it could include focus groups. We really need to lean on the expertise of a consultant that could help us, like what is the best path for community engagement to achieve the goal that we're looking for here. And so we can refine that as we move forward. But really what we would be wanting to do out of that process is start to look at what is some framework that we can develop so that we can establish good event partnerships. Because right now, these big events are falling on the town and to roll out. And we really should be looking at this as more of a support effort. While there be some things that we are taking the lead on, we really should be looking for those opportunities, developing that framework on how there can be community groups or businesses that can take these events and build them up in our community, and figuring out what that looks like. And then when people come to us and want to partner, we have a good solid basis on what that looks like. Go ahead. Do you have a question?
So the time frame, it's not fall of FY26. We're talking about fall of next year?
It's fall of this fiscal year. I know that's confusing.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that that's how I was.
Yes, it's fall of this year.
Okay.
Yes, FY26, but this calendar year.
It was just printed that I wanted to make sure that that we were on the same page. Cool.
Perfect. The other piece is that while we're working through this strategic plan, we can work to map out locations. So while we'll have that framework, so how we can work with partners and how we look at events moving forward, you can also look at some event. We talked about a center, like a community center park that would have amphitheater type locations and things like that. A multi-use facility. We've talked about how 5 County will be used. You have your downtown streets. So we have options, so everything doesn't always have to be in the same place, because the same location is not always best for every event. So there's variety in what that looks like, and so we can start to set some criteria and some goals on how we use these different spaces. In our 2025 holiday recommendation at this time is to maximize our community experience and to minimize impacts on staff resources in the community. And so we would like to move forward with a hybrid focus on Candy Cane Lane, where we we can integrate key elements of the Christmas parade, really focus on having that regional draw. We have staff that are experienced in managing the logistics and the command and the safety perspective of Candy Cane Lane. We can offer more visitor experiences. We can extend the event so that we can support more performance groups than what we have done in the past. Another example, I think it was Commissioner Davis that shared when the parade has people walking through and performing, it's an opportunity for them to connect with the community and see what they're doing. While we offer that performance at Candy Cane Lane, what we could also offer is a way for them to have a booth so they can have that connection with the community, that one-on-one engagement throughout the event if they would like to. We would like to find out how we can seek opportunities to further enhance how we work with our civic groups and how we can support them and they support us to make this a success. Candy Cane Lane would not be successful without community partners. It is what it is because of our civic groups and our community partners. And so figuring out what that can look like moving forward is going to be important for us to navigate. We could continue to expand our marketing outreach. As well as we really need to, back to our strategic plan, we've got to rethink how we put events on, being, the primary event partner. There are other ways for us to put out events and other opportunities. And so whether it's this year or whether it's next year, we should start exploring what that looks like of how we can bring in partners to continue to present this growing event so that we can have some shared responsibility, shared goals, but we can reach more people and maximize our resources. Are there questions?
Questions, comments from the board?
So just so that we have this conversation a little bit, and so that folks in attendance or watching also have the same information. Up until really this last parade last year, it was the Chamber of Commerce that normally hosted and put together that effort and not the town.
Correct.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
They wanted to pursue other avenues. We have not approached them this year, and I think that's absolutely, when I say like looking at event partnerships, be it on a collaborative effort or you take that and run with it as a separate event from what we're doing, we would have to have that conversation.
And I think it was 2 years ago that the chamber sponsored I don't know where we are.
Whatever
the
it was,
Christmas parade. It was like a walk
reverse
parade that they did on Town Hall property, correct? That was 2 years ago.
Last time that they did the Christmas parade would have been 2022, and they knew that they wanted to make a transition. They just weren't quite sure what, and they still wanted to be engaged with the community and offer something. And so they came to us to figure out what that could look like. What is that intermediate step while they figure things out? We had a movie night and a Candy Cane drop planned already, and so we told them we'd be happy to partner with them to bring those two events together. It worked well, but they decided the next year that they wanted to focus their energy in other areas, and they did not want to continue that.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Davis.
Sheila, on page 6, it goes back, it gives like an overall, overall view of the expenses. But you spoke to about the hours and man hours. So when looking at this presentation, it almost looks like this is the expense of just the day of. Can you break this down a little bit more so people can understand the amount of hours that get put in prior to the date of the event?
So I don't have that breakdown right here,
Okay.
but I can tell you that there's a tremendous amount of hours prior to in the event lead up. On the day of, I'll say for Candy Cane Lane, we'll have some employees that are there from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m., 11 p.m. And it's all hands on deck for my department, including we don't bring in people that aren't absolutely critical in that moment. And Public Works, it depends on the layout of the event and what we're doing, where they may operate in shifts. In the past, so in this Candy Cane Lane, we did not bring in any support to help them with street closures, as we had to do with Spring Fest. But in that scenario, almost all of their staff are also, all hands on deck for an extended period. But they're also having to come in, they're setting street closure and detours up in advance. They're having to blow the streets. They're having to sweep the streets afterward, before and after. So there's a lot that goes into it other than we just close the street and people come out and have fun. They're also helping us keep the event clean throughout the day. We're responding to electrical concerns. So it takes, they're setting up the bumblebee strips, and there's just a lot of different moving pieces. And the same for the police department, 8 a.m. to 11 p.m. There is, once we close that street at 10 a.m., there's at least one officer there the entire time the street's closed. And then the rest of them come in typically about 3:30, depending on whether or not they're immediately working command or how their shift roll-in is going to be.
And then you also talked about civic groups where they have the opportunity to have advertisement. You also talked about with the traffic, with the street closures, how that impacts business. Do they not also see a positive side of foot traffic that comes into their businesses? So even though we're closing down streets, I know during the parade, we have thousands of people that are there. Are they not seeing the positive impact financially of foot traffic that is coming in to support those businesses?
We really struggled in this past year getting downtown businesses to stay open for the Christmas parade. A lot of them on Sundays aren't open already, but even trying to talk them into, hey, this is a great event, this is an opportunity to expose your business to people that wouldn't ordinarily come downtown. That a lot of them, and it comes down to that capacity thing, right? They can't do everything. And so Teresa tried to work with them to get them to be a part of it, and it turned into mostly the Main Street having a booth with information about the different businesses downtown. And so, I mean, I agree that there could be some positive impact, and I don't want to say there wasn't, and that some of them didn't find positive impact from it. But overall, what feedback we did get was that it's burdensome to have it back to back during a holiday season for them to be closed on Arundel Avenue.
So we have the Candy Cane Lane is on a Saturday. Christmas parade last year was on a Sunday, and if they're already closed, how is that negatively impacting? If we have street closures, their businesses were already going to be closed, so how are we impacting lack of business on a Sunday?
While some of them have operating hours, some of them might work, like they're just trying to access, their building while they're preparing for the rest of the week. So that, I'm just giving you the feedback that they provided us, is that too many closures in such a short period of time had a negative impact. Perhaps the ones that were closed and weren't participating aren't the same ones providing that impact or that feedback to us about it impacting them. So, I mean, everybody has an opinion, either in support or not in support. I want both, I don't want both, I want this one, I want that one. So we're going to get feedback in multiple different directions.
I'm looking forward to the feedback if we continue to engage the community in our discussion to make this final decision of what that looks like of 1 or 2 end of the year events. Another thing that we discussed, going back to the civic groups, was the parade gives businesses an opportunity to advertise. And so that's the positive side of this. Whether we're talking about on the floats or cars or vehicles, and they're able to advertise. But I like the sound of hearing more booths at Candy Cane Lane and what that looks like to give them give citizens the opportunity to engage, to not just see them going by, but to have conversations.
Yeah, and I also think this is an opportunity where we can seek, as we grow, how we do things will evolve, sometimes every year, sometimes every couple of years. And so it could be that we take a step this direction this year, and while we work through the strategic plan process and we come up with a really good, more sustainable framework for us as we grow as a town, but it could be this year that maybe there's an organization that we could bring in as a partner that could really take and run with that organization and business participation in Candy Cane Lane and how we can really highlight them. We can navigate that. That's part of our action items in our recommendation is to find ways that we can lift these groups up, but also find partners that can help us achieve our goals.
Thank you.
Question.
Mr. Miles?
So to my understanding, have we taken as the town taken and kind of considered involving more like citizens or volunteers? They have reduced the overall cost for organizing a Christmas parade. Have we kind of explored that?
Yeah, we didn't have time to explore it. We did seek volunteers last year. We didn't get a lot of volunteers. And so we were having to piecemeal it with staffing too. I will say it's my understanding that that's one of the reasons why the chamber stepped away from doing the parade. There were a variety of reasons, but one of the reasons were they struggled to get the volunteers to help. And so I really think it's something that we need to take a real hard look at and figure out who really is the best organization to move this forward and make the most impact.
Okay. Thank you.
The questions, comments from the board? I know we also kind of bounced around the idea of whomever we get in the 5-county stadium to see if they could play a major role in some of our event planning also. Right now, we haven't made that decision yet on who will be coming into 5-county stadium, but I think that's one of the primary things that we need to focus on with whoever's coming in there, is to have more engagement with the community and have more of an impact on some of these events. So it's just not, we don't have the burden on the town.
Christmas in July.
Yeah. Any other comments, questions from the board?
I think it's just key that we explore many options, as many options as we can right now. To be council sounds like Christine, that option, is that correct?
Excuse me, can you?
Just want to make sure you're getting what you want. The key thing you were saying, you want to explore as many options as possible. Is that correct?
Yeah, I just want to continue the conversation. Right now, it sounds like we're trying to decide whether we're having 1 or 2 events, and I want to make sure that we are exploring all options of what that looks like to continue both. I'll say this, my engagement with the citizens, obviously we know both are very important to our community. We want Candy Cane Lane and we want Christmas Parade. Understanding and hearing the impacts that it has on our staff is very understandable. So I want to look at what we can do to make it less burdensome on the staff while still engaging with our citizens to give them what they want and what they're requesting. So what does that look like? And we talked about the Chamber of Commerce, so he's talking about possibility more connections through sponsorships, partners with our local businesses. Like, what does that look like? So I would like to have engaging conversation of how we can work with the community, we can work with civic groups, we can work with our businesses, we can work with the board, all that, all put together, working with our staff.
So don't leave out our Main Street coordinator too as well. We do have a contract with a person that facilitates our Main Street coordinator. So that could be also the person that we can kind of implement into the process to kind of take some of that burden off staff as well. That is a contract position that we do have too.
So if I can jump in quickly, my concern, I'll be honest with you, of pushing this forward is that you're going to run into the situation we ran into last year, where we're making decisions at the last minute. So we are at the end of June. You pretty much have 2 months, tops, to have things in the right place. So I hope that you can, if you can quickly move forward from this slide to the recommendation. There's got to be a way we can have a conversation around how do you want to move forward? Do you want to move forward with, at least for this year, on a hybrid thing as we're recommending, or do you want to do both? I think we need to have a conversation around that. We don't want to come to you in July because your July 7 really is an outlier meeting because you have a different focus there. If we were to wait until August to come back to you to decide on this, I think even if you were to bring in a consultant, that's pushing it. The reason is because other communities probably will be leaning on the same consultant. There are very few consultants in the market that do this. And so if we push this through that, there will be competition, cost goes up, we're not a priority, and so we end up back to where we were last year. Bearing in mind that I'm not recommending that we do 2 events for the very reason that the impacts are significant, not just on staff, but also on resources and residents in terms of closure of streets and all that. If I can have a successful conversation with the chamber and maybe the downtown association to take the load off of us, I'm very sure they probably will be thinking of 2026, not 2025, because they'll be worried about time constraint as well. So if you want to say, Ty, we want you to go forward with both, I'll do that. But what I don't want to do is to come back again in 2 months' time and still waiting for a decision. I'd rather we know tonight where you want us to go, which direction you want us to go. We're not able to engage residents, businesses right now, because engaging them right now is not going to give us the results that we want, because you only have the summer months to engage people who are going to be likely going on summer vacations and all of that. If we do a proper engagement through our strategy plan process, that will be informing how we handle this in the next year. But for this year, we really don't have a whole lot of time to decide whether this is what we want to do, our recommendation, or you have a different recommendation that we go with. I'm sorry if I'm pushing you, but I think we need to have a conversation around making a decision of what we want to do so that we don't lose time. If we're going to use an RFP process, that in itself will take about 30 to 45 days to get somebody. So let's assume best case scenario, we make a decision tonight. We ask Sheila, we want to do both. We need to talk to somebody who is going to, lead the Christmas parade for us. We may not necessarily use the consultant that we used last year, but we have to have a procurement process in place. So that pushes us towards the end of July. That person will have to work with us. We'll have to develop logistical solutions to some of the challenges that we have. But I just need you to give us a sense of what you want us to do so we don't lose time. Is it a hybrid thing, or do you want us to continue the way we've done it in the past?
Well,
Commissioner Patterson?
I would say for me, as you know, I've been to so many Zebulon Christmas parades because that's what we did on the first Sunday in December at 2 o'clock. We went to the Zebulon Christmas parade for years. And so the nostalgia that you spoke about when you talked about the Christmas parade, I love the Christmas parade. It's different now because we're a part of the parade. But I also understand that Candy Cane Lane has gotten to be a major event that draws people. Like it's truly a regional draw because we have people from all over the place. And so I'm not sold on the hybrid event, but I respect and understand what we will be facing if we try to do both of these this year. And so for me, I would like to know what that looks like. What is hybrid? What are the key elements of the Christmas parade that will be integrated into Candy Cane Lane that would make it, feel as if we kind of have two events into one, but we still have the Zebulon Christmas Parade was a parade that Knightdale didn't have a parade years ago. Wendell didn't have a parade. So Zebulon was the place to go for a Christmas parade. So how do we captivate that nostalgia for our residents, our lifetime residents, but we still have Candy Cane Lane continue to be the amazing event it's going to be? And I'm sure you have an answer, but I don't know, even with the answer, what does it look like?
Yeah, so you like what I've got. I'm gonna go back to this slide where you talk about the different elements. A lot of people like seeing your youth perform. They come in, they may dance, it might be a marching band, it could be step performers. Sometimes we've had carolers, we've had gymnastics, tumbling groups, cheer groups participate. You've had football organizations participate. And those are all elements that we've already got pieces to in Candy Cane Lane, but maybe not as much of it that we could try to bring them into the fold. And not everybody that participates as a performer with Candy Cane Lane has had a booth where they had that presence throughout the entire event. Their presence was mainly just when they performed. And so that could be something that we encourage. Anybody that comes and performs, you also automatically get this booth. Some of them have participated. There's some years we've had the Magnet School have a booth. Some years we've had some of the dance groups have a booth. Some of them lead some of our activities as well. And so we may see a little bit of it that's already there, but we can encourage as we have more that even more of them have participation. And to get to the point of how do we connect, when you're walking in a parade and it's, you see them in there, you have that visual of what they do. It's not as easy to connect with them about who they are and what they do for the residents that are watching the parade. It's a little bit easier to have that interaction at Candy Cane Lane when they stop and they engage with the activity. One thing that we've seen that a lot of our volunteers from these different civic groups, they come and they are awesome. They have done a fantastic job of helping us make sure those activities are happening, but they aren't necessarily equipped and set up to make sure that they're representing their business. So their focus is on providing that service to the community and less about also highlighting what they do and who they are. So we could work with them, and that could very much be a relationship with the chamber where we can work with them or work with Main Street on how can you best represent your organization when you go to an event and give some best practices so that we can maximize that impact. That you'll have car clubs that come in that participate in a Christmas parade. They like to show off their car. They're very proud of it. We could work with the community to offer a car show where we could have voting involved, more community engagement on those pieces. Tractors, it's not uncommon to have tractors in parades, but it's also not uncommon for tractors to be on display at an event. So we could still have them participate in that way. I think the other piece is if we can engage the chamber or maybe another organization, as we talked about with the civic groups, on how can we best expose businesses. One way to do that in working through your partnership is sponsorship, right? So when people want to sponsor something, a lot of times it's that's awesome and I want my name associated with that, or this is awesome and I want to help make it happen. But in reality, it is very much a marketing opportunity. And so we could figure out, we did that with the Deck the Halls event. We had a relationship with the chamber where they went out and fundraised, did sponsorships for it. And there was a relationship where the expenses associated with the piece that they added to Deck the Halls, it came out of the sponsorship dollars, and then anything left was split between the chamber's nonprofit, and then the other went to our youth financial aid program. So, I mean, there's lots of different ways that you can bring those pieces together. One of the things we played with, in that there are some communities that have these day events and they kick it off with like a bicycle parade or a walking parade, something along those lines. I can't promise that immediately because I've got to look through like our capacity and logistically what that looks like. But I mean, maybe that is something that we could do, is we could have a grand march into the event where we are celebrating people, especially if we're encouraging these organizations to have a presence throughout the event and not just, you have this 15 minutes here. But maybe if we can get them there throughout the event and they have a station and they have some engagement multiple times, that might be another way that we could work that.
Maybe I can jump in quickly also and say that I think I have a sense of what you want. I just want to be sure that I think we want some elements of the parade, no matter what, whether it's one event or two. And I'm not just saying you, I'm saying community. This seems to be a desire for that. Commissioner Davis talked about the decorated floats. You would rather like to see something like that because it's a marketing thing, it conveys. So maybe the challenge for us is to go and develop something and then bring it back to you in one way or the other, whether by email or something that we send to you that really mirrors these aspirations and these thoughts. Am I conveying your thoughts properly?
Sheila, I believe, was getting ready to speak, or she was speaking a little bit to it. And I'm a visual person, so I was thinking the movement. So we started talking about like tractors and whatnot. I'm thinking they're stable, right?
Okay.
But having elements of the parade, if we're having walkthrough, and I think about combining the two, but having somebody, like she's saying, even if it's at the beginning, but there's a movement. Because when we start having some of these events, I do know that a lot of things are stationary, and I myself have gotten to the point I can't get from one side to the other side, and I'm hearing things are happening, so I haven't been able to see everything that's taking place. So if there's a way that we can have a movement where we have the youth performers coming through, or whatever those groups, even if they're just walking, if we don't have tractors and vehicles coming through for safety reasons, but is there a way through that path that you have on the maps on page 4 of how their movement, and that's the way to combine the two elements?
We wouldn't be able to have moving vehicles within the event space, but
people.
You might recall the St. Patrick's Day walking parade that occurred on Horton Street. And so that just, if you have that visual reference, I mean, that could be something where we could stage on Vance Street and temporarily close that small section between Horton and Vance for some staging. And then once we walk them through, we would be able to open that back up at some point. But there are some ways that we could incorporate something where, and I think you would have more than what you have participate in the St. Patrick's Day Parade, but that may give you a frame of reference on what that could look like as a march into the event. But I could put a layout together and share that with Ty so that we could get that to y'all.
Need to have some kind of movement, because I think that's what's so appealing about the parade is the movement. And what we've got when we have Candy Cane Lane are stationary events happening in different areas, and it just speaks volumes to how successful the event is, that it is so hard to move through there now because it's become just so popular and so well attended. I do think that it would be a good idea for us to make sure that we are reevaluating what a parade route could look like in the future, especially as we redevelop the stadium. And I think that it needs to have place and intention as we go through and talk about our strategic plan, because I do think that it's super important to our sense of community, but also I do understand that because this is an event that traditionally has not been taken on by the town, it's become extremely burdensome for us to try and do these two events back to back. And if it means that we do it a little bit differently this year, I'd like to make sure that it's place held so that moving forward, we don't forget about it and that we circle back to it, because I do think that we have the desire in the community to have a full parade. And if it can't happen this year, I understand, but I think that we need to make sure that we are constantly exploring how it can happen in the future.
Yeah, I agree. I think that there's a difference in just saying we need to take a minute and collect ourselves here, and maybe give ourselves an opportunity to put the right pieces in place for this to move forward productively as we grow as a community. But your street network won't always look like it does today. We do have some constraints currently, but as these communities grow and as the town grows and you get bypass opportunity and some changes in routes and how people can move through the community, it may change how a parade would look. And as we get new parks on board, as we get new mixed-use developments come in, as 5-county relationship works, as long as we have that as a goal that we get back to where we can productively have bring back the parade that we're all used to. I don't think just because if you choose not to do it this year, that doesn't necessarily mean it's not important to us or the concept of it's not important and doesn't have value. It could just mean the town we are today might not be able to support it in the same way, but that we can work towards having that infrastructure and that growth that will help us get back to it. Does that make sense?
It does, and I do worry about staging in the park because last year it was a lot, and if we had needed to get emergency services back there, it would have been pretty horrendous to try and do that, and I don't want to put ourselves in a position where we're opening ourselves up to that kind of potential risk. But I think that we want a parade. We should make sure that we move forward with that intention.
Any other questions, comments?
I can't overemphasize that we kind of really focus on citizen engagement, part of that to offset that cost. Citizens and volunteers driving that force is going to offset that $38,000. That's a big number for me. But I know talking to the citizens of Zebulon that they're willing to be part of that process so we can offset that cost. So I ask that we intentionally kind of like reach out to not only civic organizations, but individuals themselves, that group, put it out there, let them know we're here. We need that participation in it in order to pull this off. This is something that the citizens want. So they're gonna rise to the occasion, I believe.
Thank you. I think we have a match in order. I think I have clarity on what you want. We'll go back and then pull some things together and then share that with you. I also have asked Main Street coordinator, Ms. Piner, to coordinate a meeting between myself, the Chamber, and Downtown Association over the next few days to have a conversation with them about the parade and see what we can come up with. I'll brief you on that once we do.
Yeah, the Main Street program really does need to be on board with this moving forward if the parade route is going to be through downtown.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Questions, comments from the board?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next on the agenda is closed session. We need to go into closed session to pursue NC Statute 143-318.11A5 to discuss matters related to acquisition of real property and pursuant of General Statute 143-318.11A3 to confer with legal counsel. We're going to close session. 5-minute break. Okay. All in favor?
You need to do the vote, the roll call vote.
All in favor? Roll call. Commissioner Davis. Commissioner Harrison. Commissioner Miles. Commissioner Baxter.
Favor.
Motion passes. Okay.